Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for what is actually the last in our series of fascinating virtual fireside chats here at the Chamber. I'm Catherine Holt, the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce, and I am joined today by Dave Obee, who's the editor-in-chief for the Times Colonist newspaper. Welcome, Dave.
Hi there. Good to be here.
I wanted to end off this series with Dave because I thought that like the Chamber, the Times Colonist has had kind of a bird's eye view of this whole COVID-19 circumstance that we have found ourselves in over the last few months. Like the Chamber, the Times Colonist has been impacted directly, which we'll talk about, but also has seen the impact on our community socially and, of course, of particular importance to the Chamber economically. So we have lots to talk about. So just as a little bit of context, the Times Colonist and its predecessors have been serving Greater Victoria, the island, since 1858, which makes it one of the few organizations that is older than the Chamber itself in this region. So both of us have seen lots of interesting times come and go. So, Dave, could you start off maybe giving us some context for how you first thought we had a problem coming at us with COVID-19? When did you first think it was going to hit us hard?
It was probably in late February. I was talking with some of the people I know in the business community. At the time, we were thinking, the general feeling was, the coronavirus was out there, but it might affect us in some way. It might be like SARS or whatever. We might have to worry about it a bit, but not a whole lot. But by late February and into the first week in March, I was hearing from more business people of all the tiny, tiny ways that it was affecting their business. And after a while, I realized already the supply streams or whatever, people are starting to cocoon a bit, that kind of thing. I realized it would hit us in a big, big way. So before the pandemic was announced, I started taking measures here at the Times Colonist to move people further apart, I banned meetings, large meetings in our meeting rooms, that kind of thing. But it really was the business community that was the first to alert me to the fact that there was something going on, something major happening here.
So you talked a little bit about what you did early on, which was try to prevent the spread as you could with some social distancing measures. What was the biggest impact on your operation as time went on, though?
By far the biggest impact that we faced was, the pandemic was declared on March 11th. Within hours, we had the first case on the island. We had the NBA season, then the NHL season. And starting March 12th, what we saw was an absolute collapse of local advertising. Our advertising people were busy taking phone calls and emails from advertisers canceling their ads, basically. We saw almost immediately, we had a strong January, a strong February into March. Things started to weaken in the first week because there were just the first signs of something happening. And then we went right off the cliff that weekend of March 14th, 15th. And by April, to speak a bit out of school here, our advertising revenue in April was less than a third of what it was the previous April. Just a horrendous drop, and we're coming back, but it is a very, very slow climb back.
Yeah, and I think that is maybe the primary characteristic of this experience for business is that so many other economic impacts were slow to happen. You had some warning, you had some slowdown, you could see things kind of dropping over a number of months or even years. And then you found yourself in a difficult, recession or depression or something that was difficult for a business to deal with, but unprecedented in the sense that this has just been that cliff effect for everyone. No preparation time, just amazing how everything just stopped dead.
It was the speed of it was breathtaking. This is a downturn like I have not seen in my career, in my lifetime, and the speed was breathtaking. On March 11th started off like any other day. By the same time on March 13th, I was writing a column to try to sort of calm some of the hysteria in town. And I did 2 columns that weekend, both devoted full pages to those columns, just trying to say, we'll get through this, we'll get through this. Because we went from calm to panic overnight. And I think we're still seeing some of that panic. We're certainly seeing the impact of that panic in the business community right now. It is hurting a lot of people. And I think that a lot of local business people are not going to survive this. And I think that's a huge shame.
Yeah, and we're in a strange zone right now because we do have this lifeline of the federal rent relief and wage subsidy and some loans in some cases, and that's giving, I think, a false sense that businesses are continuing. But when those government programs end, we've got a problem. And the other problem that is emerging is we're counting on local business. In the case of certainly downtown Victoria, that relies on office workers. We're not seeing office workers come back to their offices. So if we're not going to have tourists in this town, we absolutely need those office workers.
We need local people to support local businesses. That's always been true. It's never been more true than it is right now. We need to get local people out there and support and help their community because the ripple effect is real. The ripple effect is dramatic. The lack of cruise ships this year is going to impact how many local businesses, and they all employ people. They rely on services from other businesses, and so on and so on. It gets down to the point where it affects your neighbor and your friends. Like you might think you're somehow not part of it, not affected by the cruise ship thing. Some people are even cheering the fact that cruise ships aren't coming. But the impact on the city is going to be so dramatic. It's one of those bizarre things in that we're so careful about protecting our friends and neighbors. We wear the masks and we do social distancing and all of these other things right now to make sure that we don't spread the virus. We're willing to put ourselves out. We're willing to pay extra in order to make sure the virus doesn't spread, the coronavirus. But there's another virus that in some ways is going to be much more serious, and that's the economic virus. If we are shopping online, if we are not supporting local businesses, we might as well be coughing in the faces of our neighbors. It's the same thing. We are going to be hurting them. We're going to see more social issues developing unless we support the people in our community, and we have to do it quickly.
Yes, one of the best indicators of physical and mental health is economic health as an individual and as a community. And man, Victoria was booming. Like you said, so many businesses said their January, February, and first part of March were amazing this year. And it was for you, it was for the chamber, it was, I think, for the town as a whole. And we were looking at, we were calling it the return of the roaring 20s from the 1920s that were very, very economically successful. And so, this impact has taken away that robust good health that we've had economically, and it does have an impact in every other aspect of life. So, yeah, you are talking about supporting your friends and neighbors, as you said, economically, but that leads to just a healthy community overall.
Absolutely. Like we've written some things that about the link between a healthy economy and a healthy community. A strong economy is one of the best indicators of health, of physical, emotional health. We've written some things on that, and I've had some very, very harsh responses from readers. One person said that Obee would love to exterminate all the old people, just so his business buddies can keep on making money. That is not at all the point. It's totally missing the point. The people who are most seriously affected by an economic downturn are the ones at the lower end. They're the ones we have to watch out for right now.
Yes, absolutely. So the Times Colonist did step up in a big way, as you have in many ways. I mean, first of all, at some point, I want you to talk about just the importance of newspapers in a community, in an economy, because I know you live it and breathe it, but not everybody focuses on the importance of a newspaper, especially kind of a history. I think of you guys as the history keepers of our region. So I want to hear you talk about the importance of newspapers, but also what role you played specifically as the Times Colonist to try to contribute during this circumstance.
At the start, one of the roles of a newspaper, one of the roles of a responsible local media outlet of any sort is to, in some ways, calm hysteria. If things are starting, if people are starting to get panicky, we should be there as sort of the voice of reason to say, we'll get through this, we'll work together, we'll get through this. And I thought at the start, that was one of the most important things to do, was just say, hey, we've had downturns before, not like this, but we have survived every other downturn. We can make this, we can make it work. And I did 2 columns in that first weekend, unprecedented for the publisher of a newspaper to do 2 back-to-back columns and devote a full page to each one, just trying to get the message across that, hey, this is tough, we can do it, we can do it. And I think that's a very important message to get out there. And those columns led to a phone call from Robert Jall. And one of the most remarkable conversations I've had, he phoned to say, there's got to be something we can do. And that led to the creation of the Rapid Relief Fund. It was basically Robert's idea, but we have the big megaphone. We were able to get the word out there. So we also got a hold of the Victoria Foundation, got them involved. We raised $1 million for those who've been affected by the downturn in the first 36 hours. We raised $6 million overall, a phenomenal amount, and that's unmatched anywhere else in the country. We did that because there's some people here who care deeply about the community, and the Jall family, of course, is well known for its interest in a healthy community. I think it's very important for a newspaper to be providing leadership at different times, and this is one of those times. And sometimes that leadership comes in different ways. We've published 4 times now a full page heart flag that you can put in your window. You clip out, put in your window. And it costs us money to do that at a time when we're not making money. But I think it's vitally important for us to be doing this kind of thing for the community. And I felt, the day after the flag first appeared, I drove around just looking for it in windows, and I was amazed in some areas to see like 4 to 5 houses had that flag. It was just, it was great to see that. We've replaced the traditional crest on our masthead with a heart flag, just in support of health workers. We're doing whatever we can. We've put Adrian Rayside's cartoons on the front page, especially on weekends, just to sort of, get away from the usual sort of routine coverage of this kind of thing. What we're getting from those briefings that are done every day, it's sort of new cases, new deaths, how many in hospital. It's the statistics. And at a certain point, it's the same as a sports scoreboard page, to be honest. It's interesting as far as it goes, but whether we have 138 deaths or 139, what does that matter? It's the impact of this whole thing that really, really matters to everybody, that we shall be looking at. The impact on our lives, how much our lives have changed because of this, and what we can do to get through this, and how we can help each other get through this.
So that's the Times Colonist as a community leader and as a business, but you are also journalists at the Times Colonist. How has all of this affected your ability to actually do the job of journalism?
It's much tougher now than it has been in my entire career, I'll simply put, because it is tougher to get out. We can't go to events the way we used to. A lot of events that we would have covered have been canceled. When there are no public hearings at the local city hall, that kind of thing, that affects us. No concerts, no sports events, and that kind of thing. It also has allowed, in some ways, it's made it easier for politicians and government officials to avoid serious questioning. Something as simple as the health briefings, as an example. I don't call them press conferences. They're not press conferences. A press conference, people are allowed to ask questions. When the people who are asking the questions are determined by the government, and then they're allowed only one question, cannot follow up their question, cannot ask another, and if you do ask a nasty question, are you going to be asked ever again? That is not a press conference. So as much as I respect the work that is being done by people like Dr. Bonnie Henry and Adrian Dix, at the same time, I think we need a bit more openness, and we're not seeing that right now. They're not allowing us to ask these questions at all. They're hiding behind the curtain of COVID.
Yeah, and now that we are hopefully heading into a zone where we are focused more on economic recovery. Not to criticize what they've done, because we have the enviable position of being able to be in economic recovery, but where's the equivalent conversation going on about economic recovery? You know, this daily briefing has, as you said, been very, very focused on one increasingly narrow effect of COVID, which is on the healthcare system. Do we have enough space in hospitals? Do we have enough protective equipment for health workers? Absolutely essential, not debating that. But, you know, as the chamber, and I'm going to say as the Times Colonist, where is that broader discussion about, and now how do we extend that conversation into the other impacts of the virus and how we all work to overcome those things, flatten that curve? Like I said, yeah, there's the health curve, but there's also the economic impact curve that we have to flatten as well.
We should have a daily briefing every day, you know, on the economy. We should have something on the social situation, because again, you know, hate to restate it, but the economic health is a huge driver in physical and emotional health. It is. I know many people who are fairly well, you know, they're smart people, they're educated people, you would think they're well balanced people. And they're telling me they're not sure how much longer they can take this. You know,
or they're not even getting out of their house.
Some people I know proudly say they haven't left their house in 6 weeks, and that's not healthy. You know, that's a problem. We have to get beyond this kind of thing, and we have to realize the fact and recognize the fact that there are huge dangers in sort of the continual lockdown and so on. And I know there hasn't been a proper lockdown here in BC, but people have taken it that way. They voluntarily, you know, never before have so many healthy people been put in quarantine. You know, and I think that by the time this ends, we'll have a lot more unhealthy people as a result of that.
Yeah, and you know, I think Bonnie Henry has been trying to walk a fine line, and she will be the first to say that she hasn't been extreme in her requirements, including an absolute quarantine on the population or lockdown. You know, businesses were never told to shut. It was, you always can continue as a business if you can operate in a safe fashion. So she was walking a fine line there, and I think she, you know, just in that she was just in the New York Times as this iconic figure who has managed the situation very well, which of course she has. But you know, she was talking about all of those effects of the more extreme you get in your response, the more extreme the consequences to the virus that you're trying to control. So
I think Bonnie Henry is the person we needed. She was here at just the right time. It was great to have her, and I've known Adrian Dix for 20 some years. Adrian, I think, has done a great job as well. I'm really, quite happy and quite proud of that. What we need, however, is someone else, someone to speak about the non-health issues and to sort of have a voice in that as well. We're not getting that right now. And we also, I still believe we need to realistically look around to see what's happening in other jurisdictions. The Prime Minister in March, stared into the microphone at his cottage because he's avoiding Parliament, because he can do that because of COVID. He stared into the microphone and said, "Canadians, it's time to come home." Well, my daughter is in Japan. She's in Hiroshima, Japan. She is far, far safer in Japan than she is here. And the notion that she would take a flight to come back here is ludicrous, because she's at more risk. Japan has had 7 deaths per million, and they're ashamed of that. 7 deaths per million due to COVID. Canada has 209 deaths per million. Which country is safer? I think we should all move to Japan. I think it's important that people.
No, New Zealand. Yeah. That's my choice.
I can speak the language there at least. But we have to sort of see where places like New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and so on, Vietnam, what are they doing right? Because they have better numbers than we do. We compare ourselves to the States and to Western Europe, which have worse numbers. Let's open it up and compare ourselves to the entire world and see what we.
Yeah, and New Zealand, I've watched with fascination that they're now down to 0, and their very interesting and effective, I would say, Prime Minister has said, we're back. go to sports events, go to social events, go to businesses, go out to a restaurant, go to your workplace, get out there. We are going to absolutely maximize this opportunity that we have as an island with no cases to restart our economy and get healthy in every way. And I just compared New Zealand to us as an island with no cases at the moment. And the difference in the messages with regard to where we're at with our economic recovery. And, you know, we're tied to BC, we're tied to Canada, we're tied to North America. We have all of these messages that are, so many of our national messages are more appropriate for Toronto and for Quebec than they are for Vancouver Island. And I think that the consequence of that is what we're talking about. People are acting as if they're in a much more dangerous circumstance than they're actually in at this moment. And that's holding us back from making more progress on economic recovery.
Exactly. And that fear, the fear is weighing down a lot of people. The fear is stopping so much activity now. And most of the fear is not called for. It's on the island, it's not called for. We have to be careful. We have to be cautious. We have to take all the usual precautions. But we don't need to go around scared thinking that the next person I talk to is going to give me COVID, because there are no cases on the island right now. Now, a case might come in, like someone could arrive on the ferry, could arrive last night and be in the community today. I don't know that. But overall, I think we can have some confidence here that if we do things right and take the usual precautions, we'll be fine. And in terms of Prime Minister Ardern in New Zealand, rather than all of us move there, let's just give her an offer she can't refuse.
Prime Minister of Vancouver Island, is that what you're suggesting?
No, go for it. She'd like it here.
Yeah, she would. It's a lot like New Zealand, I think. I hear. Haven't been there. So let's get back to the Times Colonist. I've got a couple of questions, and as always, this half hour is zipping by at a rapid pace. So there's always something unexpected in the sense of a silver lining or a good thing that comes out of every crisis. So what has that been for you in the Times Colonist?
I think a major benefit that we've had, and I hate using the word benefit, there's got to be another word, but whatever, we're running out of time. I think it's notable that I think more people have recognized the value of a local newspaper, a local news organization. Our website is getting far more traffic than ever before at all. Our print circulation, even though some of the retailers that used to sell the paper for us have been shut down, our print circulation has gone way up in this time. It's a time when people see the need for quality information. They see the need for a newspaper. They see the need for the Times Colonist to be here. So in that regard, it's really helped us. We have a much stronger base now of readers than we had before, regular readers. It hasn't in any way made up for the drop in advertising revenue, but at the same time, you look at it and say, hey, we matter. We really do matter in this community. And any talk of newspapers dying or whatever, I think we can forget that for the time being, because we're good now. I think people see the benefit in this.
Well, this has been such a tough era for the media. I'm a journalist by training myself many years ago, mostly worked at CBC. So I've lived it too, a very tough era. And it's been fascinating to watch the newspapers that have survived, the ones that do have a tight connection, I think, with their community, a long history, a good reputation. So does that, and I absolutely agree with you, man, where would we have been without good journalism over the last few weeks? And if we had been in the clutches of those who just promote hysteria and fake news, I hate to use that term because somebody else seems to own it, but the value of journalism to keep people keep it in perspective and feeling informed and able to make their own, as Bonnie Henry also says, everyone does have to make their own decisions a lot in these circumstances. How the heck do you do that without reliable information? So I think the role of the media, good media, has been absolutely front and center and obvious to people, I hope.
I think so, but also it depends on um, the media outlets that are doing the best are the ones that are connected to their communities, the ones that are sort of embedded in the community, for want of a better term. You know, like we live and breathe Victoria, we live and breathe Vancouver Island, we love it here. If you don't love your community, you cannot be a good journalist. And journalists get offended when I say that, but it's true. You have to care about the place you live in. You have to actually want it to be better. You have to love being here, and any journalist should be able to tell anybody, any tourist, what all the good stuff is about their community. It ties in. But the more successful you are, success is based on being connected to the community. Simple as that.
So what's ahead for the Times Colonist?
It's really hard to say what's ahead for any of us right now. We'll keep on sort of rebuilding as best we can. Advertising revenue is coming back. It has to come back, because if not, we'll have to make some fairly harsh decisions here, and I don't want to make them. It's so simple as that. I think we will build on the strength we've done. We have really been helping. I think we've established our relationship with the community, and certainly we've done our best, whatever we could to help the business community as well by publishing even columns by different business leaders about the impact of the COVID on their business. It's important to let people know, people who are sitting at home, let people know what's really happening in the downtown or what's happening to local stores, that kind of thing. And who better to tell the story than people who are running these businesses, that kind of thing. I think that has given us, again, we're showing that we matter, and we are making a difference here. And at a time when our finances are, frankly, they're worse than they were during the Great Depression right now. That's what it's like here. But we can't quit. We cannot afford one day without publication. We have a duty to the community to keep on doing this, and keep on doing it to the best of our ability. And that should give us a strong future.
Yeah, and I think you have the same philosophy as we have adopted here at the Chamber, which is, if you can prove that you're valuable in a time of crisis and keep your relevance and your service to your readers in your case and members in our case, then that's what matters. It's everyone can do good things in good times, but if you can do good things and help people in bad times, that's when they're actually going to hopefully recognize your usefulness to them and support you when things are better.
I think that actually applies not just to the Chamber and the Times Colonist, et cetera. That applies to every business out there. The businesses that are providing good service now, that are respecting customers right now, that have brought in the necessary protocols and so on, and are still providing good service, they're the ones who will survive. The ones who have reacted badly to the COVID and are panicking, they are in more trouble. I want to deal with a company that's working properly, and so right now this is a time any business can do a good job when can be a success when things are booming. The businesses that are successful now will be the ones that are actually working hard to get the support of the customers.
Yeah, very true. So I've got a couple of questions from our listeners, watchers, if you would indulge me here, Dave. So the first one is, what do journalists, and in brackets it's you, what do you have planned if there is a second wave, or if they change the way they report on the crisis? I don't know what that, on how or if they, how do journalists, well, let me try that again. What do journalists have planned if there is a wave number 2, on how or if they will change the way they report on the crisis? That's the full question. That was my bad.
I'm not sure any of us have given that much thought yet, to be honest. I think that if there is a second wave, and everyone is saying there will be in the fall, but what's a prediction worth? Who saw this coming? I think we'll be more demanding of the government officials. We'll be asking, hopefully we'll be allowed to ask tougher questions, because we're not right now. And we'll be demanding more accountability than we have so far this time. I think, if I may speak in sweeping general terms that'll insult a lot of journalists, I think too many journalists this time around have simply been spokespeople for the government. They haven't been doing journalism. They've been doing stenography, and I think that has to change. I think we have to get back to being journalists, and that is asking the tough questions and actually going beyond the basic information that we're given by the authorities.
Yeah. Yeah, and now that we have what we have under our belt going into wave 2 is now we know the consequences of shutdown.
Yeah.
We'll be living the consequences of shutdown. So I hope there'll be much more focus on keeping everything in perspective and saying what are the other unintended consequences of focusing purely on, do we have enough space in hospitals? Do we have enough gear for workers? You know, and absolutely focus on those who need the help most, our elderly population. Not saying that's not important, and it absolutely has been critical and will be, but a little more perspective on what are the other consequences and how do we keep those in mind going into wave 2.
And bear in mind that wave 2, if it comes, we hit wave 1 with a healthy economy.
Yeah.
Wave 2, we're going to be, you know, by the time there is a wave 2, our national and provincial debt will already be at historic levels. We'll have many people unemployed and so on. Businesses will still be suffering. A second wave could be brutal. It could, even if it's not as bad as the first one, it could do more damage because we're already in a very weakened state.
Yeah. And, you know, I've watched a whole bunch of our members, and I would say pretty much everybody I know really kind of go through the 5 stages of grief, you know, denial, bargaining, anger, grief or sadness, depression, and then acceptance. I think we're kind of in the depression part. Maybe eventually we'll head into acceptance, but, you know, to have lived through all of that and then to find yourself having to go through that type of an emotional roller coaster again, I think that's also going to be exceedingly difficult to convince people to put themselves through that a second time or a third time or whatever the future holds. So we'll see. Other question, fear is very powerful currently. We talked about that earlier in this conversation. We had a good conversation about that. But this follow-up question is advice on how do we, as I think they're saying, a society, a community, gain more confidence that will allow our community to re-engage with the economy. So what messages, what helps people feel like it's okay?
Well, the first thing I would say, fear itself, the virus is contagious, but so is fear. Confidence is also contagious. If more of us are out there trying to live a normal life and going about life, but with the new precautions, accepting the new precautions, accepting that things will not be the same again, but going out and living our life the best we possibly can, that will be contagious as well. So if anyone who's been sort of hunkered down for the past 3 months, get out there, get out there and just see, you'll be okay. Be careful, be cautious, don't put yourself at risk because all the rules apply. But
those rules applied to everything all the time, all the way through your own whole life.
Pretty much.
Make the right decisions, handle risk.
My mom was right all along. Who knew? And anyway, yeah, just as soon as more of us start living normal lives again, I've been in the office every day since this started. So I've been coming to the office. I've seen the change on the streets as I come in. For a while, the streets were deserted. Now we're getting back to some sort of semblance of regular traffic, but it's not nearly what it used to be. We need to get people out and about and going back to their offices and going back and going about their lives. Otherwise, fear will consume us.
Okay, well, that is a very down note to end on, and I would like to end on an up note if possible. So I would just like to say thank you very much to the Times Colonist for sticking it out, for being there. And the other personal note I wanted to acknowledge is that I have been very disappointed that the Chamber's Business Awards did not go ahead in May this year, as they have for many years. It's a fabulous event. It recognizes business and community leadership in our region. And I think, for the first time, 20 years or 30 years or something, it is being rescheduled to the fall, and we're looking at a good way to do it. But I wanted to acknowledge that you were one of the finalists in our Community Builder Award, which is a very prestigious. We've changed it from Business Person of the Year to Community Builder of the Year. I think that's the one you're in, isn't it, Dave?
I think
Or are you business?
business leadership.
Yeah, business leadership.
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Anyway.
And very pleased that you were nominated, and I'm very pleased that you were chosen by our panel of judges to be one of our finalists. Fingers crossed. And I hope that you enjoy whatever version of the Business Awards we deliver in the fall, and well-earned nomination, Dave.
Well, thank you very much. And I think there's one more thing I want to say. And you know, years ago, Fraser McCall told me to stop telling people how long I've been a journalist. That it made me sound too old. And I try to stick with that rule. I'm going to break it right now. I only break it on special occasions and for special people. I've been in this business for 48 years, since 1970.
Whoa!
And I've known, over the years, I've known many, I've worked in several cities. I've worked here at Calgary and the Okanagan and so on. I've known several Chamber of Commerce people. I've known other Chamber of Commerce CEOs. You are the gold standard. And I can only say this because you're on the way out. I would never tell you this when you were, you know, when I thought I'd be working with you a lot more, but I can say it now. You are the absolute gold standard in what a Chamber CEO should be. And I think the entire community owes you a huge debt for that. Thank you very much.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate those words. Thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you.